And that'll make it pretty dramatic when I switch to the notes of A minor. Alright, so they've got this little melancholy sound. And now back to the notes of major. Really highlighting the notes of major, and then all of a sudden bringing in the notes of minor. And then back to the notes of major. Right, so hopefully you can hear there's kind of like this otherworldly pulling effect. We're in major, we're in minor, and there's a pretty distinct change there. It's not like really pronounced. I think it's kind of subtle, but it's very unique, and I don't think I hear that anywhere else except for in Mixolydian flat 6, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Now we could do this with any two scales that started on A. I could have gone to A Phrygian and then gone to A Lydian. And you can guess, there's going to have their own sound effects for each one of those. It's going to have its own emotional context. In my experience, the most common form of modal mixture is major and minor, and that's what we're going to focus most on in this video. But I want you to experiment. And even with this jam track, there's lots of options. It's not like you have to just stick to using major and minor. So please, I really encourage you to try out the different options and hear how they sound. And if you do like something or don't like something, try to figure out why. It's good work to go in there and see if you can find out if something's clashing, or try to figure out why something isn't sounding the way you want it to. Now let's talk a little bit how the chords fit into modal mixture. And usually when we talk about modal mixture chords, you hear the word modal interchange or borrowed chords. But the jam track I'm practicing over here is just two chords. It's an E major and an A minor. So here's how I'm going to parse this track. The entire track, E is home base. E is the tonal center. Everything always wants to come back to E major. So we want to be thinking of everything in the context of E something. When I see this first chord pop up, I think, okay, what kind of scales could E major be the tonic of? It could be the tonic of E major, it could be the tonic of E Lydian, and it could be the tonic of E Mixolydian. All those scales and modes, they all have a major 1 chord. Okay, so I could play those scales over E major. What about my A minor chord? What are the different E scales that have an A minor as my 4 chord? Well, I've got E minor has an A minor in it, E Phrygian has an A minor in it, and E Locrian has an A minor in it. So those would all be choices for me to play over that A minor chord. Now I'll tell you right now, not all those choices are going to sound good. The one we're going to go with is going to one that sounds best in my opinion, and that's just major to minor. But like I said, you should experiment. I like using the Mixolydian one a lot. Locrian not so much. But anyways, now that we know we're going to be switching between major and minor over these 2 chords, here's how I want you to practice this as a guitar player. If you're not on a guitar, this concept should still apply. I'm in the key of E major, so every time my E major chord pops up, I'm going to play the notes of E major. Then, when that A minor pops up, I'm going to take that 3rd note, and I'm going to flat it, and I'm going to get the notes of A minor. That 6th note, I'm going to flat it, and I'm going to get the 7th note flatted as well. So this is what I'm playing over the A minor chord, and this is what I'm playing over the E major chord. So to practice along with this track, step 1 is just play up the E major when the E major chord hits. Play up the E minor when the A minor chord hits. And it'll be kind of boring right now, but at least you'll start hearing this modal mixture flavor start to develop while you're playing. Take a listen. Some skills on your instrument, you should be able to embellish just going up and down the scale by maybe adding in some slides, some slurs, anything to make it sound more interesting. But let's keep that same idea going up and down, just phrase it a little bit better. To highlight that change to the listener between these 2 tonalities. And a good way to do that is to kind of come with a motif or a lick that constantly uses or references one of these notes that will be changing. And that way they really prominently hear the difference between those 2 scales. So for example, like that 3rd note has to get flatted when we switch from major to minor. So let's come up with a little scale run or a little pattern that prominently features the 3rd. And I'll keep it real simple right now. We'll just go like 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1. Something like this. I'm using the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd note of the scale, and the 5th. And that 3rd will have to flat when A minor comes around. Right? And once again, even without the jam track behind me, that's a really nice effect. Because your brain has really completed the A major tonality in its head when I do this, and now all of a sudden you're shattering it by bringing in that flat 3. So let's take that same idea and put it in over the jam track. I'll do it in a few different incarnations, different patterns, but you'll hear one common theme, is that there's one note that's going to keep popping up, and then when the chord changes, I'll make sure that that note is a note that gets flatted, so you can really hear that the tonality has shifted, that the scale has shifted completely. Maybe my favorite way of accenting one of these changes is to bend a note through the notes of the scales as the chords kind of move around it. So here's what I mean by that. Like in the key of E minor, right, we have an F sharp and a G. And then in the key of E major, we have an F sharp and a G sharp. So we've got a little bit of chromatic passage here. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and bend through those chromatics. So I'm hitting the second note, I'm bending to the minor third. This is still while I'm in the minor key. And then as soon as the major chord comes up, I'll kind of bend it so it finally gets to become a major third. And this bend just kind of gradually follows that change of our shift from minor to major. I think it's a really, really cool sound. I love the effect. Take a listen. I mentioned that major to minor sounds the best to me in this instance. I just want to bring up, I think Mixolydian is a great substitute for major in this context. The reason I don't like Phrygian so much is because in E Phrygian, we're bringing in an F natural. And I really don't like the way that F natural sounds in the context of E. I think that's great for a darker sounding jam, but I don't all of a sudden like that appearance of F natural in this context. So you might, I just personally didn't. Now I've isolated myself to a very small scale shape here, and you don't want to just do that, but I think it's a good place to start because this can be very overwhelming if you're taking entire shapes of scales and trying to run all the way up and down them instead of just focusing on the change of the chord tone. You know, if all I'm doing is shredding up and down, I'm never going to be able to develop these really cool little nuanced changes between those two chord tonalities and really kind of highlight that change there. So right now we're starting off small, but obviously take whatever skills you have, whatever shapes that you have, and try and apply this same concept to those. Now a quick note, you don't have to use modal mixture just to play over the jam track. There is a scale that contains all the notes of E major and all the notes of that A minor chord. And that scale is E Mixolydian flat 6. I have done a video on that scale. I highly recommend it if you like the way that this jam sounds, because E Mixolydian flat 6 is kind of very indicative of this chord change to me, and I just love that sound altogether. And it is another option here. I just want to bring that up, even though it doesn't really include modal mixture. It just sounds a lot like modal mixture. Because that scale is like half major and half minor, it gives us the same effect kind of what we're hearing here between switching between major and minor. Now a quick little note here, when you have a chord that pops up and it's not in the key, depending on how long I get to work with that chord, like if that chord's going to stay around for like 16 measures, then you have a lot of options to develop a whole new tonality over that chord. But when a chord pops up for just a small amount of time, I really like to use modal mixture to accommodate it because it kind of helps reinforce my tonal center. It's not like I'm going into some unrelated key that has nothing to do with my tonic. No, I went from an E scale to another E scale. And I think my brain really likes that. It appreciates the fact that we maintain some tonal center there. But if I have enough time, you know, that chord's around for 16 measures or something like that, then you got time to really go nuts and really develop a whole new flavor out of it. So this isn't the only way to approach a chord. I don't recommend you only think of changing keys this way, but it certainly is a fun way, and it's definitely one of my favorite. So I hope you liked this video, and I hope you learned something, and I hope it gets you practicing and learning the relationships between your scales a little bit better. If you did enjoy this video, you can thank my Patreon subscribers for making it possible. If you really like this video, you can join them and check out my Patreon page. I've linked to it in the description. But if you can't do that, that's fine. Just like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff helps me out. Thanks for watching.
Ever wish you could play guitar? Guitar Tricks makes it easy for anyone to pick up a guitar and start learning.
Suppose you know absolutely nothing about guitar. You've never even held one before. No problem.
Out of all the scales that a musician will encounter throughout their studies, the least useful and the most awkward is definitely the Locrian mode. The Locrian mode doesn't even have a perfect fifth, and a perfect fifth is needed if you want to build a major chord or a minor chord. And 99% of all music is built around a
Hey everyone, so for those of you that tuned in yesterday to my live stream, I want to apologize for the poor performance of it. I started out with the wrong thumbnail. I tried to play clips on the computer, none of them played properly. I didn't go through and test I didn't test everything properly. And I wanted to make up for it because you guys deserve to have a good live stream. I've live streamed every single week since they introduced live streaming back in, I think, 2016 on YouTube. And I didn't want to let that terrible performance of yesterday go by with all the technical difficulties. It's funny because Billy said to me, oh, other YouTube channels, big YouTube channels, have technical difficulties on live streams all the time. I said, yeah. But I don't want this channel to have technical difficulties in live streams. It's bad enough that I'm always struggling when the things start, not knowing when it starts, because there's a slight delay on these things. I've got Aaron, by the way, helping me today remotely. Billy is not here, so I'm running everything myself. And I want to try something out today because this is something that I wanted to do and that I actually have done in the past, but on a private YouTube thing, because I actually have a second channel that I never talk about, but this is where I do this. And I want to try this out and see what you guys think of it, because people have asked me about it. It's like a classic album series, or me talking about albums that I think are really strong front to back, and I'm trying to think of a good name for the series. I want to talk about this record. I'm going to run the sale that I was running yesterday. This is how I support my channel. The Mega 50 MEGA 50. It's 50% off my ear training course, my Beato book bundle, 700-page PDF, and my new guitar lesson, Quick Lessons Pro course. So if you guys wanted to get it, it's a good time to get it. It goes through the rest of the weekend. Somebody turned me on to this, one of my favorite bands, and a band that I never talk about on here, and it's Counting Crows. And somebody turned me on to Adam Duritz, the lead singer's cooking show that's on YouTube. And I start watching it, and he actually on the Counting Crows website does these cooking things, right? So I just got sucked into it, and I start watching it one after another, and then you get on those YouTube rabbit holes, you know, where you just start watching video after video, and I was like, oh my God. The second record, Recovering the Satellites, which came out in 1996, October 15th, is one of my favorite all-time records. And what's interesting about this record, it's produced by Gil Norton, who also produced The Color and the Shape by the Foo Fighters the same year. He did those two records that came out. And they're two of the finest records that came out in the 90s. One of the things about Recovering the Satellites, so I heard the first record, and the first record was a great record. Really great record. But the second record came out, and I never listened to it. And my really good friend Rich one day was like, hey, have you heard the new Counting Crows record? And I said, no, I don't know, I'm not that interested in it. He goes, I'm telling you, you're going to love this record. This is so up your alley. I know what you like. The songwriting is amazing. It's nothing like the first record. It's a total departure. It's a rock album, this kind of thing. But the songs and the arrangements are phenomenal. And I was like, all right, we'll give it to me. So he gave me a cassette of it. So I'm driving around my Honda. I had when I first moved here, I had a Honda Civic, 1989 Honda Civic with no air conditioning in it for years, up until 2009. That's what I drove from 1994 to 2009. I drove a Honda Civic that I bought in 1989. with no air conditioning in Atlanta. Okay, so anyway, so speaking of that, it's hot right now. So I'm going to play a bunch of the tunes off the record right now. And this is something, I don't know, the video might get taken down. I don't know if it is. On my second channel, I do this. I'm not going to play all those songs, but I'm going to talk about them. It's kind of like a what makes this album great live, okay? Because it's absolutely phenomenal. Let me get into this and talk about how the first song starts out and what I like about it. Because I'll tell you right off the bat, Adam Duritz's lyrics on this record are phenomenal, but his melodies and the guitar arrangements, the drum arrangements, Ben Mize, I mean, everything. The string parts are done by Paul Buckmaster on the two songs that have strings. I mean, just everything about this is incredible. But Gil Norton, if you guys are fans of The Color and the Shape by Foo Fighters, which has Everlong and My Hero and all these great, great songs on it.
Ну нет, за себя он так думал. Ну нет, Мaratovich. Так. Ну, Maratovich, вот наоборот. Ну, что тебе надо? Я знаю, знаю. Ладно, пора заткнуться. Прощание. Пришивание. Всем большое мерси, огромное спасибо. Очень люблю, очень, как это говорится, люблю. Ага. О, кто? Как пройти, да. Ну хорошо, ладно. Я просто не сконцентрировался, все равно все. Вообще так не.
Hey everybody, it's me Jake, and I'd like to fill you in on what's going to be happening here on the Signals Music channel over the next few months. The exciting news is that I am working on a giant rhythm guitar course. It's going to go over everything you could possibly want to know about keeping good time and playing good rhythm guitar. Because I personally think that one of the biggest differences between the amateur musician and the professional is mastering rhythm. If you have mastered rhythm, then everything is easier. Playing live is easier. Writing interesting music is easier. Playing in the studio is easier. It's a key component to going from schmo to pro, is really mastering that rhythm grid. But it can be a complex topic, and a lot of teachers kind of avoid teaching it because it can be kind of a frustrating topic as well. Now, some of you know that in December, I finished my songwriting and music theory course. I'm selling that for $270 on my website, but I gave it away to all of my Patreon subscribers for a name-your-own-price scenario. And what I'm really excited to share with you is that this entire rhythm course that I'm working on is going to be available to all of you at a name-your-own-price system. So whatever you're comfortable paying for this course is what you're going to pay for this course. If all you can handle is $0, that's fine with me. If you can handle $1 million, well, that's fine with me too. I don't know if the website's going to accept it. But that's how it's going to be for this entire course. Now, this is a big deal. I'm going to be spending hundreds of hours on this course and really putting my heart and soul into making the best product I possibly can make for you all. So how can I give it away for free? Well, the answer is I have something called Patreon subscribers. This is just a bunch of people, a bunch of very generous people that have gone to my Patreon and clicked a button to donate either $1 a month or $5 a month and sometimes $50 or $100 a month because they believe in what I'm doing here. And because of them, I don't have the same pressures that the average YouTuber has. It's well known in the YouTube community that the YouTube algorithm really punishes creators who aren't posting constantly, who aren't posting frequently on a schedule. So this convinces a lot of YouTubers to constantly post content, whether they like it or not, whether it's good content or not, whether they're motivated to make that content or not. And I find that to be a pretty frustrating system to work within. The revenue that I receive from Patreon means that I get to work on the projects that I actually believe are important. And right now, what I believe is actually important to work on is a free rhythm guitar course for everybody. And there is no way I would possibly be able to spend hundreds of hours on something like this and give it away if it wasn't for their support. So I really want to stress my appreciation for my Patreon subscribers, and if you do decide to pick up this course at a discount price, you should probably show them some appreciation as well. So how long is this going to take? Well, I do suspect that I'll have the course done by mid-August, which means I think it'll be accessible and available on my website by late August. But until then, it's probably going to be pretty quiet here on the Signals Music channel. I may post a few videos from my actual theory course here on the Signals channel, but if you're looking for more content from me, there's really going to be only two options for the next few months. Option number one is to sign up to my Patreon. You see, every single week until this course is done, I'm going to be doing live streams for just my Patreon supporters. I do these quite a bit, where people submit questions ahead of time, and then I'll answer them live, and I can prepare different musical examples, and we'll even do live composing as part of that answering. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing those. So those are going to be on every single week until my course is out. In addition to that, I'm going to be doing weekly composition streams for just my Patreon supporters. So this is starting up a song, writing a song, and really walking through every step of it, from the production to the music theory to the mixing, and that way, you can kind of follow along my thought process as I start with something, as it evolves. I find that to be very helpful. Even as somebody who's written a lot, I really enjoy watching other people compose and listening to them explain their composition process. Because there's not one way to do this. There's a million ways to write music. So every time I listen to somebody else explain their process, I pick up on a different trick, some other technique, something else that I personally wouldn't have thought of. Now, if you don't want to sign up to my Patreon, I would recommend you subscribe to my other YouTube channel, which is called Jake Lizio. What I'm going to be doing there is editing some of my previous Patreon content down and loading it on there. You see, for my Patreon subscribers, over the last 3 years, I posted a lot of content. I've made courses on writing melodies, I've done stuff on guitar solos, on rhythm and strumming, all sorts of different content, and lots of those live stream Q&As. I think it would be fun to maybe just take some highlights out of that and post it on the Jake Lizio channel so everybody else could see it. So you should expect some content showing up there, but other than my Patreon and that channel, you'll probably not see too much on the Signals Music channel until my course is done. But it's not just my Patreon supporters that deserve some recognition here. It is also you, my YouTube subscribers. I am immensely grateful for you watching my videos, for you sharing my videos, for you commenting. I'm convinced that I have the best comment section on the entire website here. So really, thank you. It means a lot to get those comments and to know that these lessons are actually effective, that people are actually learning from them. That's why I keep doing it. And that in combination with the financial support from my Patreon subscribers means I can continue doing what I think I should be doing best. I think I should be teaching. I think that's my main job. And teaching is not always conducive to just making a video every week. Sometimes, you know, if you want to teach something correctly, you're going to have to do it a little bit better than that. And I think producing a full course with worksheets and you know, PDFs and videos and drills and exercises you can play along with, I think that's really important. And I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels like the right thing to do. Giving it away feels like the right thing to do. I'm excited to do that. And I can only do that because of everybody's support. So thank you, everybody. I will see you soon. And thank you for watching.
Тебе кажется, пожалуй, так.
GuitarTricks.com is the easy, fast, and fun way to learn guitar that's worked for millions. Grab your guitar and simply follow along with friendly instructors who show you everything up close so you know exactly what to do. Forget boring theory and repetitive exercises. Beginners start by learning simple songs right from the start to keep things fun. With over 11,000 lessons, GuitarTricks.com has lessons for the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Ed Sheeran, Johnny Cash, and nearly every popular artist you can think of. Get a 14-day free trial at GuitarTricks.com/YouTube, and we'll send you a fun bonus gift just for trying it out.
Welcome to another session of Signals Music Studio. You are now ready to learn.
I am now ready to learn.
You will remember all you are taught.
I will remember all I am taught.
You have a deep desire to smash that like button. Now when I count to 3, you will become fully alert and ready to begin the lesson. 1, 2, 3.
I'm Jake Lizio, and in this video, we're going to explore the world of musical drones and pedal tones. Now, this is a very simple concept, but it can have some very advanced applications. So we're going to start pretty simple, and then we'll introduce some gradually more complex topics. To begin, a drone is simply a sustained note. And when we talk about drone music, we mean that that note is being sustained through the entire song, not just for a few measures or something. Now, there's entire genres of music that rely heavily on the drone concept, specifically Carnatic and Hindustani music from India. The tampura is tuned to a root and a fifth, and as it plays, it creates this wonderfully warm drone sound. Similarly, the sitar has drone strings as well. And on top of these steady droning notes, Indian performers have a wide variety of scales that they can use to compose or improvise with over. And we'll actually experiment with some of that stuff at the end of this video. But these styles of music are very old, and they didn't find their way to the Western world until about the 1960s. That's when the Beatles took a lot of trips, and some of those trips were to India. And when they were in India, they were heavily influenced by Indian music and culture. The first mainstream Western drone song I can point you to is the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows, which starts off with a sitar drone and relies heavily on just one note, C, on the bass guitar through the entire song. Now, on the Sgt. Pepper's album, George Harrison wrote Within You, Without You, which obviously employs the Indian drone technique, but also utilizes many more elements of Indian music. However, my favorite example of the Beatles employing this technique is in Blue Jay Way. That song starts off with just a single C note droning on the organ and ends with that same C note droning all the way through. But when most people listen to that song, I don't think they're picking up Indian or Carnatic vibes. So I do think it's a great example of employing these techniques without having it sound too different from what we would define as Western mainstream music. Now, even though the Beatles experimented with this concept pretty heavily, it didn't really catch on in the Western world. I was hard-pressed to find you many examples of something that would actually classify as drone music that made it to the mainstream. One example I'll give you is the song Pepper by Butthole Surfers. That song really has no chords. It just has one underlying note. And the verse sections don't have any note. So it's a drone for most of the song, and then for the other parts of the song, there's just nothing going on. It's just drums and vocals that don't have a real melody to it. But it does create that drone vibe that you may have recognized from that Indian Carnatic style. But I do think there's hope on the horizon for drone music, especially with the resurgence of doom metal and drone metal. A lot of these styles rely on just one tone running through the entire thing. The band I'll point you to is Sun. Specifically, their song Frost is a great example of how evil and dark and powerful something like just a simple drone can be for your compositions. Now, what's really important in all of these examples is how it makes us feel. There's something very specific and unique to the drone sound that affects us in a very unique way. For me personally, it taps into a stranger, more abstract, trance-like meditative state. And I think that's why you hear these things a lot in meditation music and calming ambient songs. It really has a profound effect on just your biophysiology when you hear a static note as opposed to a bunch of changing notes. So I do think as a composer, it's kind of important to keep that in mind. If you're trying to write something that's supposed to elicit some otherworldly or religious or holy vibe, something that's, contacting the spirit world or tapping deep within, I feel like drones are where you want to go for something like that, because it's immediately kind of put your brain into that space. But droning doesn't have to sound whacked out and really psychedelic. Actually, there's a lot of examples of it on the acoustic guitar that just sound nice and modern and shimmery and kind of bright and happy. You see, when guitarists play an E major, the E major chord has a natural E string ringing out and a natural B string.
Наоборот, нет, наоборот, нет, я просто прописал так. Да наоборот. Ну наоборот. Ну нет, ну вот это и есть он самый, да. Да не надо мне себе одному писать. Да надо. Так не надо играть. Да, вот это есть на самом деле. Вот наоборот, значит, да.